I think everybody to some degree is facing this problem in different ways, but essentially budgets are not going down, they're going up. The workforce is going down. Workforce is not going up, and there's no way we are going to be able to handle the work that is in front of us. Like if you think about how this is going to play out in 5-10 years, unless we start looking at how to adopt technology a little bit differently than we do today, we've got to get there, or the workload is going to crush us.
I'm Rachel Coble.
And I'm Liz Dean.
Welcome to Mock It. This podcast interviews industry experts from AI innovators to UX architects to nonprofit leaders and lots of people in between.
We explore the back of the napkin ideas that impact the nation, so you don't have to dig for the discoveries yourself. Enjoy, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hello, everyone. Today's guest on Mock It is Bonnie Evangelista. She's the Acting Deputy Chief Digital and AI Officer for Acquisitions at the DoD Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office. That must take up all of her resume.
Yeah,
because that is
big signature block.
A big title and a big title underneath. But that is okay. She has a lot to say, so she should have a big title. As you can see in the episode, Liz won't be next to me. She will be on the screen as she was visiting her family and remote. But we still have a really great episode for you. If you've ever wanted to learn a little bit more about acquisitions, maybe learn a little bit about owning a winery, which we'll get into, or about Tradewinds Marketplace, then this is definitely the episode for you. Although I can never listen back to my own stuff.
You don't listen to your...
I used to, because I used to be the one that would go through and pick out things. But now we have someone else do that. Yeah. I did it when I wasn't the host, when I was just solely the producer. But now as the host, I feel like I skim through, I'll listen to Liz, and then I plug my ears and I hear myself talk.
I hate hearing my voice. I feel like what I hear when I speak is different from what gets heard on the recording. And I'm like, oh God,
No, I would listen to every episode just because I would constantly critique myself.
Oh, that's good.
And there's a little bit of especially in the beginning, when you just do something you've never done before, there's a little bit do I sound stupid?
Did someone have to convince you to do the podcast, or was it your idea? Or
so it started as it wasn't even my project. I was the procurement person, implementing the contract to get the project going. And then the person who was kind of the ringleader, it was bundled in I would say a suite of projects that were all going on for AI literacy.
Wow.
And there was really no owner of that project. And I love podcasts. I am an avid podcast listener. And so I just took ownership of it because I didn't want to see it die. And I also I had an idea of how to make it interesting, and not be a platform of government platitudes. So I convinced myself to do it, and there was nobody else taking ownership of it. So I did. And we I think for, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 months, we did a thing. And then we reassessed. And so we had some data points, I was, listening to myself, and I'm listening, and we looked at who else was listening. And I'm we should make this an asset to the acquisition community. And we kind of rebranded to the Defensive Mavericks platform and stuff like that. So we'll see how long it lives on, but it was probably one of the most fun projects I ever did.
I love that. That sounds really similar to Mock It. If you go back and listen to the first season episodes, very different than what it is now. And the branding's completely different.
Yeah. It was the first 3, maybe 4. I don't remember how many. Definitely the first 3, because I remember very clearly I had some help getting guests, because I was we need some really stellar, interesting people in the AI space. They were 2-hour episodes, hour and a half.
Oh my goodness, long.
Because I listen to long podcasts, and I'm thinking, oh, that's what other people. That is not what. But I was also immersed in the conversation, and I like long form conversation. I don't think we have enough platforms that allow us to express ourselves in a way where we can unpack or untangle like hairy, complicated things. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what are some of your favorite long podcasts?
Oof.
They don't need to be work related.
These are not, so Paul Chek.
Okay.
Chek. He is a holistic health practitioner, but he's been doing this since the 80s. Like he was, I don't know if anyone calls him this, but like, I'm sure he's a godfather of the holistic health movement and whatnot. Wow. He finally, like 5 or 6 years ago, went into the podcast game, which, and now he's also publishing a lot of his work, which is, it's like an encyclopedia's worth of work. So,
oh my gosh.
But the fact that he started podcasting, because the reason I found him was because he would be a guest on podcasts, and I would crave like finding him, you know, in these like holistic health spaces. Joe Rogan. I can't say I'm like an avid Joe Rogan fan, but like he's definitely up there in ones that I am browsing for good
and if
content.
He's a good interview guest on or something like that.
Yeah. And those are like, what, 3 hours long, you know?
Oh my gosh. I can't that is so long. I feel like my podcasts are usually around like an hour, but I do always want them to be longer.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, keep talking.
I know. It's like, it's another version of radio to me, except you can choose the content. It's not like you're waiting for the radio station to like give you the content.
Yes. And you can skip through the ads really quickly, that 15 plus button. And you're just like,
yeah. So there's,
you're listening to very good educational podcasts. My podcasts are just like girly sitting down and chatting to each other and telling funny stories.
Isn't one of the like number one genres out there is like murder mystery or something like that?
Yes, my mom got me into My Favorite Murder for a while.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I can't be listening to true crime. It's messing with my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I'm with you. I don't want like, I won't even watch, I don't like watch sort of like horror movies or like even like SVU or like what's the one that's like the Criminal Minds? The really dark ones. I'm like, I can't do this because I feel like I'm going to sit in my apartment and get murdered. Like,
yeah, I feel that. I
yeah.
can't do that either.
Yeah. So,
it's nice that you did you were smarter to go off things you like and that you know do well than to just.
Well, I stuck to topics I know, but I think what made me somewhat successful at putting my foot in the podcasting game, I was just curious. Like I would never went into honestly, I hardly ever prepped. And when I say like, of course I looked into if I didn't know the person, and I would look a little bit into their history just to get a sense of who they are. But I really craved authentic conversation.
Yeah.
I wanted to treat it like as if I was getting to know you for the first time. Like I didn't want a scripted version of something. I really wanted to figure out what was on people's hearts, which is, when you say it out loud, that sounds kind of corny.
No, I love it. Because that's Liz and I too. We always jot down questions for references, but we never go through all of them, and we always ask questions that aren't there. And so when podcast guests ask for our questions in advance, we always give a warning like, we're probably gonna ask different things too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I mean, like this is how I feel. I don't know, Rachel, I don't want to speak for you, but like I feel like our vibe is like very friendly. Like we like just like what you're saying, get to know you, like have like a real conversation. We don't want it to be like stiff or stifled. But people are so interesting. It's like, we're talking to people about their passions, their expertise. So I'm like, wow, tell me more. Like, you're very cool.
I remember when I first started, they wanted to do weekly episodes. I'm like, how the heck are we going to do weekly episodes? Like, we're never going to generate that much content. But to your point, like people are so interesting. We never had a shortage of guests, of interesting people with interesting stories and interesting expertise. Like, cause we were really trying to get into like, don't be scared about emerging technology. Like AI is kind of the thing of the day, but, it'll change at some point. So like, you should think of it as like, you're going to have to exercise this momentum, this muscle over and over again, as we're learning new technologies that are just going to come at us. So
Oh man. I mean, how often do you have to talk about AI in your job? Like, is it an everyday thing?
To the point, there were a couple moments on the podcast I realized I was in a bubble because I do talk about it every day, and I forgot not everybody talks about it every day. And there was somebody, I don't remember the circumstances. Somebody legitimately was asking, like, what is ChatGPT? Or,
oh my gosh.
Like, he had no idea how it worked or what it was and how it would add value, you know, like how it's adding value to people's day to day and like why it's instrumental in a lot of things that are happening today. And it reminded me, it was a humble reminder, like that when we talk about upskilling, that is what we are facing.
Yeah.
And it's not, some people are just, there's lots of different reasons why people touch this stuff or don't touch it. I, to some degree, also fight technology. I hate upgrading my phone.
Cautiously optimistic about technology is what I like to say.
I just bought a new car and everything beeps at me. And I don't know why it's beeping. I've my last car, I had it for 10 years. I loved the car. It was great. The engine was dying. Was not, I would have
driven it to the ground.
Absolutely. And it's, I don't know, it takes energy to relearn. And some people are just like, I'm good. And so there's lots of even ways in my life. I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't need this new dangle GPT nonsense. You know, I can totally see people doing that. And we have to like really empathize with people who are in that state and help them understand like why there is or is not a reason to try something different. That's hard.
I get that. During the Olympics, which is sadly over as of yesterday, I felt like Google's AI, there were ads for it during every single commercial. And I kept being like, you hate the Google AI Gemini stuff. I'm like, just write your own email. Just like, I just was like, I'm over all the AI ads. But then I felt old and was like, oh no, I guess this is kind of cool.
That's the thing that gets me is I hate doing operating system updates on your laptop. Because every time you do them, I feel like it just like messes up your laptop. I'm sure that's not actually what happens in practice. And it's just me being like, you know, having to learn something new. But yeah, every time I'm like, oh, this is so annoying. Like, this doesn't work the way it used to work. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta be more positive. Like,
yeah.
It's me. It's not the laptop.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you ever have like, what's your go-to explanation for, or push for adopting technology when you're talking to like military people or people in government where they historically are like, oh, that's a lot of security risks.
To me, that's easy. I come from the acquisition community in federal government. Specifically, mostly in my career has been procurement. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of rules, a lot of regulations. So in general, I think everybody to some degree is facing this problem in different ways, but essentially budgets are not going down. They're going up. The workforce is going down. Workforce is not going up. And there's no way we are going to be able to handle the work that is in front of us. Like if you think about how this is going to play out in 5-10 years, unless we start looking at how to adopt technology a little bit differently than we do today.
Yeah.
Even something as like, how do we edit a document together? Like a Google Live type, you know, like these are things I think a lot of people do on the commercial side very well. And like in the government, we're having a hard time, like getting to a place where we're live editing a document and routing it for approvals inside some kind of digital ecosystem. We have got to get there or the workload is going to crush us.
Do you think it's generationally or demographic wise? Is it because government historically people stay in their roles for a lot longer? They've been there for a long time, so they don't want to change. They're older, not bringing in as many like Gen Z or Gen Alphas.
There maybe a little bit of all the above. I will say there's a little bit of sprinkle in some institutional bureaucracy because there's just this protocol that becomes the way of life, and it's very different depending on what organization, what level you're at in government.
Yeah.
I will say this is going to get very interesting because there's a generation of people who grew up with AI technology, literally.
Yeah.
And they're going to enter a workforce that is like 10, 20 steps behind the rest of the world. And I think there is a retention or
they're gonna be frustrated.
There's a recruitment problem if we don't take it seriously.
Yeah. Oh, that actually scares me.
Yeah. So like we've talked a little bit about the recruitment issues with, for people going into the government workforce. What do you think, with acquisition specifically? So, MetroStar has a lot of different acquisition contracts, and everything that a lot of the things that we've learned from talking to our clients is it's kind of like trial by fire. It's a hard subject matter to learn. How do you think that plays into recruitment with such a substantive subject matter that people need to learn?
Yeah, Bonnie's opinion on that, because I don't. This is not something I study or have. I'm part of any kind of like workforce planning on that front. I know there's a number of initiatives that are trying to tackle the things you're talking about. Honestly, like in my experience, if we can be so deeply connected to the mission, I don't think any of that stuff matters. I think that's part of the reason why people like me and some others who are on my team are still in the government after 15 plus years. If the times in my career where I've done my best work is when I've been embedded with the end user or the mission owner. And I'm seeing that in spades as well in the Department of Defense, where the more connected and I in my mind, I'm like deeply connected. Like can we have such a relationship with the end user or the operators in which we're trying to impact, that we can almost be their advocate in the acquisition community. And I see tremendous potential for even acquisitions. Like if we can become like the system that those people count on, we should be today. It doesn't feel like that today, but I think the more we can foot stomp and promote people like myself to spend time with end users and get to the point where like the end user mission becomes like our mission. I think
the goal.
Yeah, I think people will want to become the change agents inside the department versus like just another cog in the wheel.
Did you always, I saw that you got your degree in political science from Virginia Tech. Did you know that this was what you wanted to do, or like what was your goal?
No, you know what's funny? There's a program now that OUSD Acquisition Sustainment promotes called Defense Civilian Training Corps, DCTC. And I would have been a poster child for this program because they're trying to create a civilian corps modeled after like the Reserve Officer Corps, where they give scholarships to college students in exchange for public service in the department.
That is really cool.
It's amazing. Like I'm like, part of me is thinking, what took us so long?
It's like some people want to serve, but they don't necessarily want to like serve in the government
so
or in the military.
At Virginia Tech, fun fact, there is a senior military college within the university.
Oh,
everyone knows Virginia Tech to be a fun, or not just fun, but like an amazing civilian university. But inside, it actually started like in the late 1800s as a military college. Like,
oh my gosh,
it was just a military college. I think it was sometime in the 60s. Someone's gonna.
We'll fact check. We'll put something down there when it started.
There's a lot of Hokie alumni out there who are like, man, Bonnie needs to get her facts right. But it was when they started inviting or allowing civilians to join, and eventually the civilian side just like it blew up. I was in the Virginia Tech Corps of Cadets, and that really is where you see your reserve officer training corps, your ROTC. And Virginia Tech has all of them: Air Force, Navy, Army, Marine Corps, even Coast Guard. Wow. And I didn't do ROTC actually though. Like this is how it gets. I feel like the story gets weirder because
I love a good weird story.
Everyone's thinking, oh, Bonnie just went into the military and whatnot. I had zero interest in the military. My oldest sister was also in the Virginia Tech Corps of Cadets, VTCC. She was on an Army scholarship, and she did there was a military band called the Heidi Tidies. And
I love that.
I would go visit her, and I just thought that was like, it was weird, but fun. And I thought it would be kind of cool to do college a little bit differently. So I also joined, the Virginia Tech Corps of Cadets. I joined band company, and I played. So I'm talking like, I wore a uniform every day. I got up at 5 a.m. and did PT every day. Like I did all these things, and I was not in ROTC.
No intention of ever being in the. Oh that is dedication.
My freshman year was terrible because that's kind of like your initiation year, and so you're treated like
crap,
very subpar. I would say, like we can only walk in lines and on certain sides of the side. Like no TV.
I wouldn't survive.
Yeah, it's like condoned hazing.
That sounds like my sororities on crack.
I called it. That was like my version of a fraternity or a sorority. Yeah. Like it was just their own initiation into like this community. And then I did the band thing too. So I did that with no intention of joining the military, even any intention of joining government service. I just but it prepared me pretty well to go into government service and whatnot. And that's kind of where I landed. I was at a job fair right before I was supposed to graduate. It was like the spring job fair before I was supposed to graduate. There was one booth that said, send me your resume to an email address. Everybody else that was there was really like, go to this website or check us out. And there was one booth that said, send me your email or send me your resume to this email address. And I did that. And that was the Department of Homeland Security. And I got that job. I had no idea what acquisition was. I just said, sure, I need a job. And
I feel like that's how a lot of people end up in government. I mean, that's how I ended up in government. It was 2020. I was like, please hire me. I don't know what any of this is, but I would like a job, please.
I was very, I'll figure it out later. And then I got into acquisition procurement in particular. I was actually kind of good at it. So I just kept doing it. And here I am, still doing it.
Don't you just love when you're accidentally good at something and you're like, okay, I guess I'll keep doing this.
People are so afraid of applying to different jobs. I think we try to combat that with some of our disclaimers on our job recs, but that's the thing. You learn the job on the job. I mean, you're not from the job descriptions. You have a general idea, but when you're really in it, then you get to know like the subject matter. You get to know like the cast of characters and stuff like that. So
you gotta have good soft skills first.
Yeah.
What were your soft skills?
You know,
being in the military cadet program.
I was pretty good at figuring things out, and
that is an amazing soft skill.
Like no matter where I ended up, like I could just, and I think that's honestly what's serving me well in a lot of places. Even I land today, like I wasn't terrified. I mean, I had a level of terror and fear starting a job and trying to
figure it out,
have bosses and do life. But not being crippled by it and just asking questions. Like I got really good at asking questions, and apparently like not a lot of people do that. and going back to podcasting, it was the same thing. I was not afraid to be like what is an LLM, or, what is this thing that's a buzzword, but I don't understand what that means and how it relates to me. Like
that's a really good skill in government, because the amount of buzzwords or the amount of acronyms, I think I say it on every episode. I hate all the acronyms. There's so many. It's
a language.
It is. I'm like, can I put this as a foreign language on my resume? Speaks government.
We did a big industry event about a month ago, and I offered to facilitate 2 warfighter panels. This was like one of the first times we were sharing with industry, like as an organization, the CDAO, like what is our approach to experimentation, and how, what does an acquisition strategy look like around that? And I mentioned earlier, connecting to mission and stuff. We took that approach with industry, like I made the assumption there were people in the audience who had no idea what warfighter meant. And that sounds insane in the building, but like, I'm thinking, you know, there are startups and non-traditionals who have no idea what the problem set is. And a lot of times on the panel, I even told them, I said, hey, my superpower is asking questions. So like, I'm going to ask questions in layman's term and in plain language and help people understand like what is the difference between strategic, operational, and tactical planning. That in itself is like can be a lot for some people, but like I believe everything has a way. And I think that's why I like long form conversation so much, because it takes me, you know, a lot to process. And yeah.
Well, that's really, those are the kind of panels and moderator situations that I like to listen to, because it's buzzword after buzzword after buzzword. I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
I like feeling like I'm learning in the conversation.
Or you're not getting talked, like you're already excluded from the conversation because you don't know the secret language.
Ah, yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
I hate that feeling.
Yeah.
And I feel like, go ahead, Liz.
I was gonna say, like, how does this apply in practice? Because that's like how I learn. Like, I can read a document, but I won't absorb it. But if you tell me how this applies in real life and in real, like in practice, then I'm like, oh, okay. So that's why I like those conversations as well, because you get more of those tidbits rather than just buzzwords and random acronyms, or you're like trying to write it down and then hopefully you got it right to Google it later.
I'll give a real nerdy example.
Oh yeah.
Or at least nerdy for contracting people like me who grew up in that field. One of the first contracts I was given to administer was this maintenance program so I was supporting at the time, the Transportation Security Administration. So I was in the major programs for that civilian agency. So that equated to checkpoint screening and check baggage screening. I touched it all at one point. One of the first contracts I was given when I went there was the maintenance for all of the checkpoint machines. So everything, when you walk into an airport, there's like an X-ray, there's some new stuff in there now. At the time when I was there wasn't like they were just rolling out the AIT scanners. I forget what that stands for, but basically the ones where you put your hands up over your head.
Yes, yeah.
That was kind of new when I got there.
I hate that.
I know. And the trace detector. So when they take a swab and touch your hand
every time, I'm like, what do I look like? What am I bringing with me? Why do they always think I've been making a bomb? Like, what is going on?
So I did the contract for all the maintenance. So when one broke or wasn't working or needed to be, they would do regular maintenance on it. There's contracts behind everything. And I forget the circumstances. I was told we were doing a number of actions that would have required, like a sole source type of activity on an existing contract. So somebody was telling me I had to do cost analysis, and I'm like, what the heck is cost analysis? I have literally never done it. And somebody's like, well, you just gotta do it. I made best friends with the policy person. There was someone in policy who literally taught me how to do it on the job. I didn't go to a class. I didn't I'm sure I Googled something. I tried to do my own research, but like, especially in federal government contracting, you can't, I guarantee if you research cost analysis, there might be some papers out there or something, but there's really not a lot of, to your point about practical application, a lot of content to help a practitioner do the job. There's a lot of academic things out there. But that, I vividly remember that because I had no idea what I was doing, and I would like submit things to my one level reviewers or my branch chief and my division chief. And I'm like, I have no idea if this is any good. And I would just do it. I'd be like, YOLO, let's go. I don't know.
Did they ever message you back and be like, this is so wrong?
No, they did not.
Good. And see, it worked out.
They had, I would say, opinions about in terms of what I was assessing.
Yeah.
That had nothing to do with the actual like work or what I was doing. Like all the data was there. So that like, even at the level I'm at now, there's nothing you can't navigate. I feel like I don't know.
That makes me feel
How
better.
would you say, how would you say mentorship kind of plays into this learning on the job sort of vibe that just the acquisition world is?
Yeah, mentorship, because I've had a handful of the formal mentors, where there's a mentor program, mentor protege program kind of thing. And you do it to show, try to put yourself out there and whatnot. And then I would say really my informal mentors in the community have been the most impactful to me. There's the mentors, it's really as good as you make it. And, I'm not a big social person. So like getting to know people and putting myself out there was never easy for me. However, when I would do it, like I felt like I would really come to the table, and I would always feel like especially in those formal mentor programs, it was very flat, I would say. And it's not because from a lack of trying or a lack of caring. I think a lot of people just don't know how to. I think it's harder when the relationship's not organic.
Yeah.
And usually in an informal mentorship, there's some kind of organic relationship happening. Either you work with the person directly or you have some other kind of connection to which you're forming bonds and trust. Yeah. So it was really through those types of connections where there's two people in my entire career I can still think of this to this day. When I remember when I left the TSA, Department of Homeland Security, I was actually worried I wouldn't have the same type of person I had throughout my career at TSA, because I wasn't sure if I would have someone to learn from in my next. That's when I left to come to the Department of Defense. Fortunately, that was not the case. But to your point, like how I would encourage people to seek out any opportunity that they think they can draw insight from. Never to expect the mentor to create the path for you, but there's no shortage of creativity in how we design our career paths. And the more you talk to people, the more you ask questions, and the more you're curious about how other people landed where they're at, it might inspire you to take a path that you wouldn't have taken before.
Yes.
That's literally, sorry, that's like my career in 30 seconds is literally.
No, I mean, that saves us from asking how'd you end up in your role? I like that. I think when I first started, I was really scared of finding the right mentor, not knowing that, you can have lots of mentors, and even a bad mentor teaches you something, even if you have to walk away from them.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Because they teach you what not to do.
Yes.
It's never
how you don't want to be a leader, how you don't want to interact with people, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And
yeah. I've had one bad mentor in my life, and it was very stressful. But then I was like, you know what? Now I know exactly what kind of world I want to work in and what kind of people I want to work in, that I cared more about who I was working with and less about what my job was. So I learned that, because I always thought I would care more. Like it wouldn't matter who I was working with as long as my title is what I wanted, or like I was in a certain industry. But now I'm like, as long as I like my team, I'm happy.
Yeah. Cause you spend your entire day.
You spend your whole day with them. I talk to my coworkers more than I talk to my husband, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's like, we've talked about before, like if you have a bad boss, I've had one instance of having a very bad boss, but now like exactly what you were saying, Rachel, you've learned from like that experience, you know what to look out for. And then you learn how you want to be as a leader, how you want to be as a boss, and then what you expect out of sort of the role that you're in, both from like what you're actually doing day to day, but then the environment portion is like just as important, if not more, for your sustainability at an organization.
Yeah. I'll give you I was going to say a level up. It's not quite a level up, but maybe a food for thought on that note, where yes, I agree with you in terms of having I would follow a person versus follow a job or a title any day. There's just those people in our lives. I was like, where you say I would go work for that person in a heartbeat. And I do also believe in terms of like you were talking about environment, we create the environment we work in. We are not, we're not always the victim. So, I mean, there are politics and chains of command, and there's culture things that are impacting, but like I've worked on teams where despite that, like you could have your own like little sub culture thing going on within your highly politicized, culture and whatnot. And like I've worked on high performing teams before that, like that's what happened. And I didn't know that's what was happening when it happened. But like we created that because we wanted it. We were embedded. This is one of those moments I mentioned before. We were embedded with the end users, and that's all we focused on. We just focused on the work. We just focused on delivering. And I don't know. And because of the people we were with, like we trusted them, and we believed we could do anything. And I don't know.
Do you have advice for people who are trying to create a positive environment that maybe they like the people they work with, but like something is missing, but they know that they want to stay where they are? Do you have advice for that? Yeah.
Like really be aware of your sphere of control and what you can and can't, like what are your choices throughout the day that you can make positive, and then everything else outside of your sphere of control, don't be consumed by it. Like that's always going to be there. That there's always going to be people telling you like how you have to do a thing or whatever. But if you can have enough awareness and space to not be reactive in your sphere of control, I think that really, really helps you as a person be positive and create positivity in your environment. And then likely you're bringing that energy to your coworkers, and then maybe like it just can become a chain.
I love that. I love
not my circus, not my monkeys, for everything else that's going on.
And you still might have to deal with some of the whatever in your environment is nonsensical.
A team you don't want to work with, but you have to.
Or the people that are bringing you down or whatever.
Yes.
But this
is why I always bring up that group projects in college are actually one of the best things college does for us. I know people in college complain about group projects all the time because you want to be in charge of your work. You want to be in charge of your grade, but group projects prepare you for what work is like so much better than I feel like anything else in college. Cause you're going to have someone who you're all doing it, or someone who wants to do all of it, but you're like, but I can do some of it too. And you just get to learn more about people's personalities in group projects.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
As much as I hated them too. I'm not saying I loved group projects, but I think it did prep me for the real world.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of that on my own where, I mean, there was little opportunity where you had, you were in the situations where it's like, I was dealt the cards I was dealt, and that's at work. I think a lot of people, especially in the government, find themselves where they join a new team, and the team is what it is. Like, it's not like you could pick and choose.
This person's been here for 30 years. Deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. We talked a little bit briefly about how you like to say things in plain language. So just kind of making everything in people's lives easier. We work or do stuff on Tradewinds too. Mm-hmm. I feel like the whole thing about Tradewinds is making it easier to do stuff.
I love that. That's great.
So can you tell our listeners a little bit about what Tradewinds is and kind of how it ties into government and your work and how it's doing all of that?
Yeah. I'll speak kind of in the plain language sense.
Perfect.
And then try to tie in some of the more technical mechanics of the acquisition piece, because I'm going to say some things and people are not going to believe me, I feel like.
We'll believe you.
And I say that in a very loving way, because even when I was part of kind of the team that founded Tradewinds, and it was not really it was almost like a vision in the making for for years because some of the people that were involved in that original founding team were people I worked with in other organizations and other settings. And we were going after the same goals and just for different mission purposes. And with Tradewinds though, like right now, what is Tradewinds? We think of it as an acquisition ecosystem, and it's a suite of tools and services for the acquisition community. But there's one premier offering I would say that we have called the Solutions Marketplace. And I think most people have now like associated Tradewinds with that because it's become so successful. And with the Solutions Marketplace, we had one, like maybe two. We were trying to solve two problems. How do I reduce as much red tape as possible in the procurement process? Like we strategically said, procurement is the most highly criticized part of the acquisition process. We have got to get this right. Because if we don't, like nothing else is going to work because all roads lead to contracts. And this is like one of my tags. I say this all the time, but anywhere you go, there is a contract behind everything that happens, everything, service, supplies. And if we don't start thinking about our contracts differently, like we were talking about earlier, nothing's really going to change. So it started with that in mind. Like, how do we just go faster with intention though? Like not be careless, but like, how do we, is there imperfect information in the process? Or is it an automation problem? And we were trying to tackle it multiple different ways. And then secondly, like we really wanted to get after problem solving. So of course we live in a world with requirements and, we live by kind of those requirements. However, I had done a lot of work in the rapid acquisition space, and we had kind of started gleaning to this concept of solutioning problems and tying them to requirements. And I thought there were more solutions out there than problems in the department. So I wanted to create a way to close the gap between the buyer and the seller. And so if I was a government buyer and I had a problem, all I need to do was identify the solution like as fast as possible, identify funding. And then if I get the contracting piece right, I could get it on contract super quick. And that doesn't mean the story's over there, but if that alone, if you can start to see some inertia in the right direction, can be game changing. And that is the genesis of trade. Like the whole Solutions Marketplace idea was really based off of that. So like, this is where I'm going to get a little more mechanical. Yeah. So how are we doing that? Like we have my office alone, the fastest we've been able to do a contract award was 13 days.
Oh my God.
The Air Force did 8 days. And I'm not saying that all contracting offices that you're going to see an average of 8 to 13 days, but I am saying that is the art of the possible. Like if you need to go that fast, you can go that fast. There are people who have done it. And you're at least thinking about the contracting a little bit differently in a sense where, because everything in the Solutions Marketplace is in what we call I'm going to use air quotes, a post-competition environment. We've essentially accelerated the competition and assessment part of the procurement process. Normally in procurement, after you've identified your requirement and some kind of request for proposal hits the street, there is a large source selection that happens after that. This is part and parcel why you see 18 to 24 month contracting timelines, because it's a very rigorous and onerous process. And I'm not judging that. I'm just saying that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
We're leveraging, this is going to get a little technical, merit-based assessment, which is very, very different than what source selection is, which is based on full and open competition. So the statutory and regulatory authorities that we're using to kind of check the competition box and make sure we're meeting the competition standards appropriately, allows us to do more. We can use peer panels to assess against a published process, which we've done. And then once you've been assessed and you've been rated favorably against the criteria, you're in this post-competition environment where if I'm a government buyer and I found you as a solution, I can buy like that. And that is so weird for people in my community.
It's like Amazon.
A little bit. And so there's two primary use cases with the Solutions Marketplace that are really gaining traction. And the fact that you're in the marketplace, like
it's worked for us.
I meet so many companies now that the first thing they tell me is I'm in the marketplace. Like that's becoming kind of a line for people, which is great. But one, for a government buyer, what we're really trying to encourage on the government side as like we're kind of increasing adoption is market research. Like before, I always tell government buyers now, when you're talking to industry, doing your market research, whatever, there should be the first questions you should ask anybody is, do you have a SIBR? And are you on the marketplace? Because those are the only two pathways that I am aware of where you can just buy if you want to. If there's a mission need or an operational gap, like you can just go buy and do a pilot and figure out if that's what's going to work for you. I'm not saying that's the type of workflow we need to do for everything. But what I've learned in my career, at least over the last 6 years, is sometimes it is. Like sometimes a mission dictates speed.
And accelerating some things frees up a ton for other things.
Right. And so having like really good criteria for yourself, like on what that means, like when do you just go buy, or when do you go down the more traditional procurement type of workflow? But for us, like, for emerging technology, sometimes you just got to buy, and you just got to do it. Like we have CDAO has this big experimentation as part of our strategy, and we don't have time sometimes to like do a full and open thing. But that doesn't. It's a hard balance, I will say, to do speed and control. But Tradewinds is an enabler. That's all it is. It's not a contract. Like just because you're in this post-competition environment doesn't mean you get a contract. It means you are provided a mechanism to get a contract if you can find a government buyer.
For those who are looking to maybe bring Tradewinds into their workflow, what about protests? If that's something that they're nervous about, does that play into Tradewinds, or is that outside of the framework of Tradewinds?
It depends. The classic, It depends. So as the acquisition professional who might be awarding a contract, I have options. I can leverage other transaction authority to execute a contract. I can leverage the commercial solutions opening procedures in DFARS Part 12, or I can leverage the broad agency announcement procedures in FAR Part 35. We're compliant with the competition standards for all of those. Most people are using either the OTA or the CSO, commercial solutions opening pathways, because the broad agency announcement procedures is restricted to basic and applied research. So unless you're doing early R&D type of things, you're kind of more in the prototyping or just simply buying something. For other transaction authority, protests are not rare, but they're not as there's some precedence that is the only thing that GAO will really rule on is whether you're leveraging the authority correctly or not. There is a little bit of precedence. Like if you actually look at it, like sometimes you're starting to see that scope expand a little bit, and it's starting to expand a little bit with Court of Federal Claims too. But in general, I would think most attorneys would agree the protest risk is low if you're using OTA. Doesn't mean it's zero, but it's lower than maybe if you're doing a FAR contract, leveraging commercial solutions opening procedure. Similarly, I have not seen a lot of opinions on protests for leveraging that pathway because it's so new. It was a pilot program someone's going to slap me because I don't know my contracting history.
Check at the bottom.
I think it's FY. It was like FY 2018, something like that. I remember when I was just coming into the department, it was a new pilot program. It was later, Mr. Tenaglia at the Defense Pricing and Contracting, he signed a class deviation that created actual regulatory procedures for the DFARS for using I think it's called the DoD CSO, and now it's been codified. It went through rulemaking. It's now been codified into the DFAR. So it's like a real thing, but all this happened in the last like 5 years. So there's not a ton of precedence. So like to your question, like, do people worry about it? People always worry about protests, but like people still have to kind of gauge for themselves how much risk they think they're bringing on by doing that. I think for us, like, I think we're taking the approach that it's not going to slow us down right now. We are really confident in how we're legally compliant with all these competition standards and how we are executing our contracts in accordance with all the procedures. And we welcome the day, you know, when we know it's just a matter of time when this is just, you know, going to go through some kind of scrutiny.
I have another nitty gritty question for you. So how does Tradewinds work with different contracting vehicles? So you have GSA, you have DoD, you have NASA SOUP, you have other contracting vehicles that are from various other government organizations. Is Tradewinds considered something, not a competition? I don't mean to say competition in a bad way, but is it on that level, or is it more of a tool that you would use to then use different contracting vehicles, like one of those that I just mentioned, or is this like completely different out of that workflow?
A little of both. Okay. I would say when we first started it, we had an idea, especially on the OTA side, to work and partner with consortium managers. And we really felt, because you don't have to do full and open competition for OTAs. You just have to do competition to the maximum extent practicable. We really felt like this would streamline a lot of processes and workflows that consortium managers were implementing to meet that competition standard, which was only maximum extent practicable. And we haven't really seen like a surge or an uptick in that model where you have consortium managers like coming to us and like using our competition pool to streamline or accelerate some of their awards. It's really been more grassroots in the sense of you've got people who can't find a mechanism. And I've seen this both on government buyer side as well as the industry, like group companies like yourself who have a government client and they come to us and say, hey, so-and-so is trying to buy our thing and they don't have a contract to do it. And we're on the marketplace, but they just don't this is so new to them. They just don't understand, or they just need a little help. And so a lot of the materials that we're producing right now are to help the government buyer. We have like a CO toolkit, for example, now, or I think we're calling it like an acquisition handbook or something, but it's meant for that government buyer who maybe has never used a CSO before. Maybe they've never awarded an other transaction before. And that's actually pretty common in the Department of Defense. Even though like these tools have been out there to some degree, and especially with OTA, you're hearing that itself is becoming a buzzword. So we're highly focused on making sure people are aware of merit-based processes and workflows that are compliant, and making sure they understand it's not wrong. It's just different. To your point about can you use other vehicles? I think you can. We've never done it before. I think you can. Like if we've competed for a solution and contractually that solution is available on a NASA SOUP, I should be able to go direct, and maybe I still have to do a limited sources justification to do that and be like, hey, I found this tool over here, so I'm not going to do fair opportunity or something. Maybe I still have to, we haven't really worked out the kinks of that. I think you could leverage existing vehicles to buy solutions more quickly off the marketplace. That's not been proven out though, I would say.
Maybe soon.
Yeah. I love what you said. Not wrong, just new. Yeah, those are our questions. I feel like I'm grilling you now, so I'll end my nerdy questions.
We love a good technical question. I can turn it around and ask a super, super, super non-technical, super non-DoD related question.
I love that, Rachel.
I feel like I know we're like coming up on time, and I definitely wanted to ask this, even though it has nothing to do with your like 9 to 5, as Dolly Parton would say. You own a winery. Would Lawn Press Winery with your husband?
I own a winery.
Like, what motivates you to live that life while you have a very intense 9 to 5?
Let me just reel it back for a second. It's not as glam as it sounds. And I say this again with love. It's a lot of hard work.
I know. That's why I'm like, why do you do both?
So, I'll have to take us back.
Okay.
It's my husband's labor of love. My husband, Andrew, this is really his baby, his creation. I'm just along for the ride. It came from a place of, he needed to do something different. So we met in college. We were both in band company.
I love
Virginia Tech Corp Cadets, Heidi Tidies. He graduated, I was 08. He graduated in 09. And he was in Army ROTC. He had an Army scholarship. So he got his commission at Virginia Tech, and he went into the Army. And fun fact about that. So we were long distance for 5 years, which was like just
super
the worst.
fun.
Yeah. And when he got out of the Army, he was trying to figure out life not in the military. And
as one does.
Yeah. Even at one point he did a stint with me at TSA. He worked in the training department. It was awesome. Cause I was pregnant at the time, so he would drive me to work, which was awesome.
Oh my gosh. That's the dream.
And I think he struggled to figure out where he thrived. And I think he was slowly finding this 9 to 5 thing, like, was not his jam. And it was hard for him to be creative in the setting. And, so we had a lot of family support. My family, we're the third in my family to have a winery like this.
That is insane.
So he was during this time, while he was kind of figuring life out, he was a home brewer, and we would buy wine supplies from my cousin in Pittsburgh, or she's south of Pittsburgh. And my cousin and her husband kind of taught Andrew how to do it and how to make the wine and
make it taste good, not like hooch.
As my former boss, no bathtub mint julep,
no prison wine.
The promise that's not what's going on. And he got really good at it. And so it got to the point though, where he was miserable in his job. I couldn't take it. And I said, why don't we just try something different? It was something, I think, just like we were talking about learning, like being in love with learning. So it was super scary, but we were both willing to try, and at least for him to see if this was a better fit, and if this would be a better fit for our family and whatnot. So it started, that was 5 years ago. He's still making wine today. And we opened six or 7 months before COVID, which was awesome.
Oh my God.
That was one of my questions for you. How did you guys survive?
So, I mean, we just adapted. We figured out how to deliver wine.
And also it's a little more, probably by 2021, you could do like the socially distant kind of wine tasting situation.
And just to clarify, we're like, cause a lot of people in Virginia in particular, when you say winery, they're thinking vineyard, luscious landscapes. And, I don't know, like a day out, in Loudoun County or something.
$95 charcuterie board.
Exactly. And so we're not that, but we call ourselves an urban micro winery. We are literally in a shopping center on Route 1, right next to Mount Vernon.
So cool.
And Andrew, it really has been cool to see his creative expression in this. Like he puts his own spin on even the artwork on the labels. And just fun fact on we're using AI, to generate some of the art on the labels. And, it's the whole vibe in there is just very him. It's just,
I love that. Yeah. I feel like you see so many hippie, holistic like beer places, and I hate beer. I hate it, but I love wine.
You should check it out.
And now I'm like, I'll see you in October.
Yeah. So it's, I do what I can to help out. I feel like I've not been able to help out as much recently because it's been a lot more intense the last like
busy
6 months.
Season in government. Yeah.
But I mean, usually on the weekends I'm slinging wine at a festival somewhere.
Oh my gosh.
You know, it's hard, but it has been fun. Like we've met some really incredible small businesses along the way. And, one in particular, a few doors down from us, there was a Hawaiian, poke place, and he did Hawaiian plate lunches, and like that, him and his wife became really, really fast friends, and like they fed us on a regular basis.
I love that.
You know, so like you just, I don't know, it's been a journey, and it's kind of been, but both of us, and we never really thought of it as a side hustle. I don't know. Like, I think when people meet me and they're like, oh, it's your side hustle. And I'm like,
Be like, I don't understand. You work for the DoD, and then right underneath of it says winery. Those are very two different things.
Yeah. And the flavors that he comes up with.
Yeah.
Like I would never, one of my favorite stories is he makes a peanut butter and jelly mead.
My best friend would love that.
And when he first told me about this, I said, that's going to be a terrible idea. And it's not good. It oddly works. Like,
gotta let the man be inventive.
He has a knack for flavors. That
is so
cool.
So
it's some, I
is
have
there
a winery.
Anything you've learned doing the winery business that you've translated back into your current role at DoD?
Oof.
Or vice versa.
Yeah. I'll say I hope this doesn't come across too harsh. I've learned I feel like being in a setting like wine, that's not so serious. Like
everyone's drunk.
Like being at the Pentagon, has helped me stay grounded, if that, and I actually enjoy being around people. I love that. And when I say that, it's just, when you're under a lot of stress and under a lot of, intense pressure, it's hard to be human with other people. Like you become either transactional or you become very one directional.
You lose that social sense of people that aren't also government.
With the winery, it's wine. It's fun, and you don't and it's not such a serious setting. So I feel like it helps remind me to maybe bring a little bit of that to work.
Oh, that is really good. I love that. Well, I like that you brought that up too, because we just had another conversation with somebody else who brought up their love for Buc-ee's, which I don't know if you know about
what
them.
is going on?
I know it's everywhere. It's like very fancy right now. I had to explain to her what it was though, but he
I didn't know either. Literally in the last week, I've heard 2 different people talk about Buc-ee's and how amazing it is. Somebody said they had a Buc-ee's onesie.
Yeah.
It's
right after our conversation, one of my friends on Facebook posted with the mascot. And I was like, what? I just learned about this like 24 hours ago.
Yeah. I'm clearly not as cultured as the rest of America who loves Buc-ee's.
Well, it started in Texas and it's only like in southern states. So, but I feel like it's coming up.
Oh,
it's like, it's just
taking
slowly
over.
Keeps coming further and further. I'm like, that's the way Texas is going to get us. We're all going to be Buc-ee's fans.
Being indoctrinated by Buc-ee's.
Yes.
And I'm reticent to call it a gas station because apparently it's
more.
I'm
talking like I've never been. I'm just very intrigued by the whole thing because I am a gas station food person. Like I love Sheetz.
Oh.
So I would love, there's one that's opening near my sister who lives in North Carolina, and I will be present.
Rachel, I'm just looking forward to
baby. I'll be like, yeah. I'll be like, sorry, Rocky, which is my husband. Florence and I need to go down to Buc-ee's in North Carolina.
Yeah. I've just learned about that one as well.
Nice. Yeah. But I like that. That's what I like learning about people that are in these like quote unquote serious jobs are like the things that really spark joy in them outside of work. Cause it's always surprising. Like you would never have looked at this man, which is our episode that is posted before this. If you want to learn more about him, you would never look at him on the street and be like, I bet that man is a die-hard Buc-ee's fan.
Oh my gosh.
So
I'm
I
having
love it.
thoughts of like a room, like a fan room or something in his house.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, we should send him merch. I'm sure he has merch.
We just want to thank you so much for joining us. And then to everyone who's listening or watching, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us. And then we look forward to continuing these awesome conversations. And again, thanks for your time. This is super cool.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Thanks for coming.
Anytime. Yeah.